So I got this request a little while ago, and what interested me was this word right here, anything, which didn't necessarily mean it had to be a bento box, and I was intrigued. So I decided to make vegan World of Warcraft donuts, one designed for the Alliance and one for the Horde. Stay tuned to learn how. The donut recipe came from Chloe's Kitchen, and I'll leave a link to the video below. After you preheat the oven to 350 degrees, start with 2 bowls, one large and one smaller. First, add 2 2/3 cups of flour, then 2/3 of a cup of sugar, 2 teaspoons baking soda, 2 teaspoons ground nutmeg, which I actually found to be a little overpowering. If I made these again, I would probably cut it down to 1 or 1.5. 1 teaspoon of salt is the last of the dry ingredients. Whisk a little to combine, and it's off to the smaller bowl. Combine 1 cup of non-dairy milk, I'm using rice milk because it's what I had on hand, 1/4 cup of oil, after that 1/4 cup of white or apple cider vinegar, and whisk to combine. Pour the liquid ingredients into the dry ingredients in 2 or 3 parts, mixing in between. Don't forget to scrape the sides and the bottom of the bowl, but the recipe specifically says don't mix for too long, so I only had to mix around for about 30 seconds once all the liquid was incorporated. I have 2 different sized donut pans. Both of them are silicone. This one is the larger one, and I found 2 tablespoons for each donut was just enough. For the smaller one, which makes filled donuts, 1 tablespoon was sufficient. Put the trays in the oven. If you're using silicone, I suggest you put them on top of a cookie sheet for easier transport. The recipe says to bake for 10 to 12 minutes, but I actually found that in my oven, while the smaller ones took 12 to 15 minutes, the larger ones actually took 15 to 20 minutes, and I got a dozen of each size from the batter. Next, it's time to make the glaze. For the Blue Alliance glaze, you'll want 1 cup of powdered sugar and 2 tablespoons of your milk substitute. 2 tablespoons is 1/8 of a cup, and my measuring spoons are dirty now, so I'm using about 1/2 of a cup to hold my liquid. At first, it'll look like it's not coming together. Don't add more liquid, just keep stirring. It'll come to a thin consistency like this. Now it's time for that alley blue. I used a little bit of this sky blue food coloring by Americolor to get that job done. I made this glaze in my glass Tupperware so I could just stick the top on and let it sit in the fridge to set and thicken up a little. As for the black chocolate glaze for the Horde, melt 1/4 cup of dairy-free semi-sweet chocolate chips. I just boiled some water in my kettle and poured it into a bowl that I'd already put a smaller bowl of chips in. Then wait about 30 seconds and start stirring. However, don't leave it in this hot water bath for too long. You need to keep this in temper or it won't solidify back up again when it's chilled, so take it out when you start stirring. If it starts to harden back up before you get it smooth, put it back in for a few seconds, but do so sparingly. Once it's melted, put it in your bowl and add 1/2 cup of confectioner's sugar, 2 tablespoons of your milk substitute, 1 tablespoon at a time, and give it a good stir. Once it's mixed up, you can use it like this, or you can do what I'm going to do to make it truly black and add a little bit of food coloring. I'm using Super Black by Americolor. Then put the cap on, or cover it with saran, and stick both glazes in the fridge until you need them. Here I'm just showing you my finished donuts. Before you take your donuts out of the pans, you want to let them sit for 5 minutes or so. Then just take them out and let them set up and cool completely. Next, we'll make the chocolate toppers. This is a template I made, and I'll put a link to where you can get it in the description. I've included this page with enough to make a dozen toppers, as well as individual images that you can resize yourself and make as many as you want for whatever size donuts you want. They'd also make really cute cupcake toppers. The toppers in the PDF are sized to fit both sizes of donut. If I'd made them much smaller, I thought the details would be a little impossible to make, so I just made sure that it would just fit on the small donuts and would have a little bit extra room on the larger ones. Put the template on a cookie sheet and cover it with clear plastic wrap. And we'll start with the Horde this time, since we started with the Alliance for the glaze. For this, you'll need either waxed or parchment paper. Ziploc bags would work, but I found I couldn't get a small enough cut in the corner to get a fine line, especially for the white details on the Horde sigils and the blue details on the Alliance sigils. So I rolled up the wax paper or parchment paper into a funnel shape with a very fine tip and used a couple pieces of tape to secure it. Then get your vegan white chocolate, these are the packages I'm using, and with the same method as the chocolate chips from earlier, melt them. But word to the wise, be very careful. These also need to stay in temper, and because they're mostly cocoa butter, they melt fast. Only leave them in the hot water bath for 10 seconds or so. Take them out and start stirring. Keep them out of the hot water from then on unless you absolutely have to heat them up more, and always try stirring more vigorously before you resort to the hot water again. Eventually you get it to this consistency, so scrape it into the funnel you made, fold up the open end so it doesn't come out the wrong way when you squeeze, and start piping on the white details. Also, another quick tip, I didn't do it at first, but you'll want some weights in the corners of your saran wrap to stop it from moving. I add some later when I'm piping the other colors. After you do all the white details, stick the sheet in the fridge for a minute or so the chocolate firms up. For the next color, black, make another funnel and then melt some more chocolate chips like before. For the black color, I'm adding super black by Americolor again, but don't add too much, like I'm about to do right here. Because if you do add too much gel or powder food coloring, your chocolate will seize up. And in case you're wondering, this is what seized chocolate looks like. If this does happen to your chocolate, don't throw it away, just heat it back up a little bit and add a few more chocolate chips to it and it should smooth back out. Then, just fill in the black areas. Be very careful not to overlap the red areas, but if you overlap the white, that's fine because you won't see it on the finished product. And finally, once that's done, and you've refrigerated them for a minute or so again, move on to the red. Melt the white chocolate in the same fashion as before and add red food coloring. This is Americolor Super Red. Also, this time I used a sandwich bag instead of a funnel because I didn't need quite so thin of a line. If you have enough chocolate, cover the whole medallion in red and go over the edges as well. I didn't, so I only sort of sloppily filled in the red areas and went over the edges. And to smooth it out a little better, I used the back of a spoon to flatten it. This time you don't need to refrigerate between layers because we're done with the hoard. Now it's time for the alliance. Melt more white chocolate, and to get that dark cadetish blue color, I added more of the sky blue from the alliance glaze, and then just a teeny tiny bit of black color. Seriously, dip a toothpick into the black gel paste, wipe off the excess, and stick the toothpick in the chocolate. That's more than enough to mix in. Pop it in yet another funnel, and carefully draw out the alliance lion's heads with the blue. Don't try to get all the tiny details, just get the basic shape of the eyes, nose, mane, and the outline of the mane, or it'll end up a blobby mess. Then stick them in the fridge for a minute or so to firm them up too. For the yellow, I used Lemon Yellow by Americolor, and this is where everything went south for me. I only had exactly enough white chocolate for each color, and I didn't save any extra in case my last color seized up. And of course, it did. The yellow is basically ruined, so rather than being a nice smooth blue and gold medallion, I got this cookie dough-like glop. So my suggestion is to definitely have a little extra chocolate in case this happens to you too. I had to quit with that idea, and I ended up making another batch of regular glaze and used yellow food coloring, and then I just put the lion's outlines directly on top of the donuts. However, before you stick these in the fridge to set completely while we make the custard filling for the smaller donuts, take a circular cookie cutter, mine is the same size as the outlines of the toppers, and press it into the chocolate that you put out over the edges. This will make them split cleanly from the excess chocolate and will make a nice neat circle. If you find that it's not cutting cleanly, dip your cookie cutter into some of that boiling water for just a second or two, and that should make it cut cleanly into the chocolate. Once those are in the fridge, time to make the custard. You'll need 3 tablespoons custard powder, this is the brand I'm using, but any will do, 2 tablespoons of sugar, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and 2 cups of your milk substitute. In a saucepan, combine the custard powder, sugar, vanilla extract, and 1/4 cup of the milk. Mix until everything is smooth and put it over medium heat. This is where your arm gets a workout because you will need to stir this constantly so it doesn't burn or congeal. Keep stirring until the mixture thickens, and each time it does, add more of the reserved milk substitute in 2 or 3 splashes until it's all combined. Once all of the milk is incorporated and it thickens the last time, split it into 2 parts. Add red color to one bowl and yellow to the other bowl for the Horde and the Alliance fillings. Be sure to work quickly because you must inject the custard while it's still hot. Otherwise it'll thicken up and it won't work nicely. I'm using this to inject the filling into the small donuts. However, foolishly, I did the red filling first, and that made my yellow custard turn orange. So you'll want to fill the Alliance donuts before the Horde ones, or else very thoroughly wash your tools when you switch colors, because apparently, even though I took mine apart and cleaned it, that wasn't enough. After you fill up the tube, push it into the small donut through the side and fill each one. You'll see it expand a bit in your hand, but don't add too much or it'll split open. Once those are done, all that's left is the decorations and you're finished. I found the easiest way to put the glaze on was actually to get a large spoon, pick up some glaze, put the donut face down in it, and then carefully pick it up, let the excess drop off, and turn it over. Then just stick on your toppers and you are all set for an epic battle. Which side will you choose? Is it all or nothing? Or blood and thunder? Whoever you or your friends choose, you'll have some pretty tasty vegan treats to conquer. Please comment and like if you enjoyed this tutorial and leave any requests you have down below. I'm pretty sure the 2 sides of the war in this game never heard this, but make sure you remember, there's no use boiling your cabbage twice.